Since when is Sonic scared of fighting Knuckles? It's because he's in a hurry to do something else. But still, it's good that he doesn't actually want him to fight him. Also, why can't he just run away from him? I guess his pride won't let him. It's not very nice of him though. He'd rather beat someone up who looks like his friend than run away from him because his ego's at stake. So he cares more about his ego than his own friend's safety. Knuckles disbelieves him. And Sonic makes it clear that Knuckles is known for being cynical and mistrusting of them. Something that's the opposite of gullible and trusting. After being beaten by Sonic, Knuckles tries to commit suicide with his sword. This is too dark. Knights don't commit seppuku. That's a samurai thing. A proper knight would just go to help Sonic after being beaten by him. And the fact that you could remove this from the plot entirely and not notice a thing, it's proof that it's nothing but pointless shock value, rather than justifying the dark content by enhancing the story and giving it a point. Sonic at least helps him out by knocking the sword away from him and saying there's more to being a knight than serving a king, but he still does this in the most dickish way possible, even though it can be relatable to respond to a stressful situation by being annoyed to mask the pity. He doesn't act like he cares, but that doesn't mean he doesn't. If he didn't care, he wouldn't have tried to stop him. If Tails tried to do this, I can guarantee you he'd be more gentle about this. Not to mention Knuckles is dual wielding, and Sonic only takes one way, leaving the other one behind. That's amazingly irresponsible of him. He's very lucky he listened to his advice. And again, none of this would have happened if he had just run away from Knuckles. The whole reason he decided to do a favor for the kid is because he cared more about helping people and heroism than the test. That would apply to running away from a fight too. Amy apologizes to Sonic happily for tricking him, turning from the kid that talked to him to herself again. And again, the kid had Amy's voice, so he should have known this all along. That would have made him look smarter. Sonic finds out that he has to defeat the Knights. Then he should have had to fight Knuckles after this point. That would have made more sense. So he has to defeat the Knights to get 3 swords to dispel the immortality on King Arthur. So it's another MacGuffin's plot. The swords are so forgettable. If you haven't played the game, it's very easy to forget it even is a MacGuffin's plot. I guess because the swords look realistic. Why did they let a girl become a knight in this medieval age? It sure is a parallel universe, alright. I don't like how Sonic says this to the sword with flirtatious looking eyes. I prefer him hating the sword because he's so annoying. It's like it's only written to shill the new character. The games do this all the time, like with Chip. We're not gonna like the new character just because Sonic likes him. I love Blaze's Spanish guitar theme in this game. This should always be her theme. It comes out of complete nowhere though, especially considering the jewel on her forehead. Blaze sounds unsure of herself, which I like because it makes her character more deep and sympathetic. Blaze backs away from Sonic and almost falls into the lava, but Sonic jumps down and grabs her hand to save her, using the sword to dig into the wall to stop their fall. I love that the game uses the sword for something other than what it's typically used for. And yeah, this is another good moment for his character. He goes out of his way to save her, even though she was his enemy. Even though he doesn't have proof that she's not evil. Maybe it's because she looks like Blaze, and there's some Sonic and Blaze shipping out of nowhere. Sonic asks if he's jealous teasingly. The sword finally calls him Sir because he saved Blaze's life instead of killing her, even though he chastised him earlier for not finishing a night off. At least he finally shows him some respect. Good, Merlina shows up. She says the king's on the Avalon Island. She compliments Sonic. It's not like him to be humble, but it's also a lot more sympathetic. I can only think of one time in Sonic and the Secret Rings when he acted humbly in response to compliments. Why is it that he's smug about himself all the time in the storybook games and stuff, but he acts humbly in response to compliments? Sonic challenges King Arthur to another fight. The king says his impersonation of a knight has improved somewhat. That actually got a chuckle out of me. goes to show you how witty the exact dialogue was, because normally I just hate it. Oh great, Sonic called the sword Old Pal. This feels so forced considering what a dick the sword was to him the whole game. Shadow being nice to Sonic one time at the end of SE2 wasn't enough for him to be nice to him in Sonic Heroes. This is supposed to be the more dangerous version of the fight, and it's the one where he doesn't stop to duel with him. It doesn't make any sense that he spends the whole time running away when he accepted his fight and he acted confident from the start. And yet he spends the whole time running away from him like he's more scared of him than ever. That Sword of the Kings looks way too big to fit in that scabbard. Sonic uses the 3 sacred swords from the king to undo his immortality, and then Sonic attacks him with a sword. And he's happy about it. Is he finally wisening up? The fact that he never explained why he was okay with killing King Arthur made this feel really uncharacteristic of Sonic. Because the immediate question you ask is why he didn't kill Eggman. He does this because he wants to go home. It's just that he doesn't act like he's only doing this so he can go home, because he's not unhappy about it. I think the reason he's okay with being seen as the bad guy is because it's a parallel universe without his friends and fans in it. Of course he doesn't care whether he's seen as the hero or the villain. Have any other game make that point and do a better job. It would be a lot more powerful and poignant if he risked his reputation as the hero on his own planet. The cutscene ends so suddenly after this, making it feel very anticlimactic and an obvious fake ending. I'm not sure why they play the credits here when it's not actually the end of the game. That fooled a lot of reviewers into thinking the game ended. So after Sonic beats King Arthur, his body magically vanishes. And Merlina says that the king was an illusion her grandfather conjured up. This creates a plot hole. You'd think everybody would know that he was an illusion from the start, because monarchies are hereditary. Wouldn't everyone question a king showing up out of complete nowhere? They would have known that the previous king died without an heir. They would have known about this kid walking around being the prince. So if there was never any King Arthur, how did he get accepted as the king? Why did her grandfather even cause an illusion in the first place? I guess he wanted to do a favor to the royalty because they didn't produce an heir? He didn't want a civil war to happen. Merlina says she'll make the kingdom last forever, and stabs the sword into the ground epically to create an explosion of energy as awesome music plays. I really hate how Merlina is being demonized here, getting an evil blue-haired redesign for literally no reason. She thinks she's in the right, so why would she change her appearance instead of thinking she looks good enough as she is? You'd think all she would do is give herself a queen's tiara. I remember seeing this cutscene for the first time and wondering why there was frantic evil music playing, because it seemed so dissonant. It didn't look like she was doing anything wrong by saying, "I will fix my grandfather's greatest mistake," although I'm not sure what that mistake was. He didn't make a mistake by creating the illusion. The kingdom needed stability. If he didn't make the illusion, the kingdom would have collapsed into civil war. My point is, I hate this whole Merlina's portrayed as evil plot twist, because it doesn't do a thing to explain why making the kingdom eternal is a bad thing. Sonic treats her like she's pure evil with no point or good intentions, and most frustratingly enough, it's for the wrong reasons. It's obvious that it's a bad thing for the kingdom to stagnate and never progress. But not only did she not say that she wouldn't let technology progress in the kingdom, but why is it bad for her to stay around, never ending? Is the kingdom inherently awful and a plague on humanity that should eventually die? No, it doesn't seem that bad, so why have it end? Eventually the sun's gonna expand into a red giant and destroy everyone on the planet if they don't evacuate it. If Sonic's okay with the kingdom dying because things die eventually, letting the sun expand into the earth is the natural way. Would he oppose someone using magic to make that never able to happen? I don't see anything bad about that. Instead of telling Merlina how everything needs to die eventually right away, he basically says, "This story will end when I say so," not even explaining why he wants it to end. You can't have Sonic talk to people with big statements to make. Sonic is to inspire people or give them energy. He sounds very stupid arguing with Merlina, someone far more articulate and intelligent. This point was made in Sonic Dissected too. I wonder what they would think of Sonic in issue 50, arguing with someone with a big statement to make. Sonic is acting like the world should end just because, despite everyone dying being the result of that. And the frustrating thing is that he's usually all about saving worlds from ending, making him a hypocrite, implying that he doesn't value this universe's worth here as much as his own. It's not the universe's fault that it looks like Camelot. It's not even an identical copy, so again, it's not Camelot. Merlina can be viewed as a villain for getting help from the underworld forces because the underworld forces are evil. The underworld forces are evil because they don't get along with the people here. Maybe if they're there long enough, everyone will get used to each other. There's no reason Merlina would give the underworld forces better rights than the natives. It's not an obvious anti-monarchy message. Nobody in the story is arguing that monarchy is bad because it's authoritarianism. And it's not because the Scabbard brainwashes people into being evil, or at least it shouldn't be, because he should know if she's taking the Scabbard, it must be because she's immune to it because she's a wizard. Merlina was nothing but nice the entire game, nicer than Caliburn. So he has no reason not to trust her to be a good ruler. In Sonic Chronicles, Sonic didn't demonize someone for becoming a ruler out of complete nowhere, because he was nice. Why did the evil Scabbard even exist? Why didn't someone just throw it in a volcano? Because it's too dangerous. It's a plot twist for the sake of a plot twist, because the story would be over too quickly. You know, they could have just had more knights, then the plot would have lasted long enough without destroying a character. Merlina isn't really with Sonic enough for you to grow attached to her in a deep and meaningful way. This would have been powerful if it was Shara. This is too incongruent with her previous character. This is the least villainous motive ever. Maybe don't have her have a well-intentioned justification, because it's too good. To the point where she only looks like a villain because of her underworld forces methods. Wizards can summon anything. I don't even know why she does summon the underworld forces. Even if that's a natural consequence of her using the thing, why doesn't she just zap them away? She warps Sonic here, why doesn't she just warp him home? At least it leads to a scene where everyone's being a badass. It's an action-packed cutscene. The only reason she would let the castle crumble is that she wants them to get killed. Which again, completely contradicts how nice she was earlier. Why did she compliment Sonic when she didn't have to? If she had nothing to gain from flattering him? Is she such a pathetic wizard that she can't stop her castle from crumbling? But if you ignore the context, this is a great cutscene. Cutscenes like this are a lot more suited to the adventure-loving, thrill-seeking speedster Sonic the Hedgehog. It's also a reverse setup from Sonic and the Secret Rings in its villain introduction scene, because Sonic awesomely escapes from the villain, so the villain is given badass points. And so is the hero. But hoping that a crumbling castle takes out her enemies is such a risky, roundabout way of killing them for a wizard. It's a good thing for them she's too stupid to just teleport them into a wall. Sonic is a dick to the knights for standing around doing nothing. Sonic? You took their swords! So why is he yelling at them for standing still when they can't do anything because of him? Why didn't they just immediately say that? Sonic is a dick to them, saying that they don't have to serve a king to be proper knights. And granted, he's right, but he could have been a lot nicer about it. Also, isn't the whole point of a knight to serve a king? It's like saying, you don't have to be legally employed as a cop to be a cop. A knight that isn't serving a king isn't a knight, he's just a hero. Who is he to lecture someone who's been a knight for his entire life on what it means to be a knight? Knuckles complains. He sounds like he's just about to convince the knights to do something without Sonic even being needed. Why does he say chivalry? I thought chivalry was supposed to be about how you treat women. It's like he doesn't know what the word chivalry means. Again, he's being a dick about it. He's right, but enthusiastic and cheerful, we can do it tone would have been a lot more sympathetic. And it would have been how he was in Sonic Heroes. Amy appears out of nowhere. Good thing she happened to stalk them because she wanted to see how Sonic would succeed or not. The Knights say they'll help Sonic. She doesn't have to summon underworld forces. If there isn't a king, if the king died without an heir, nobody's gonna oppose her if she declares herself the ruler. She doesn't need the underworld forces for support. I totally get making herself immortal. The next couple cutscenes are nothing but the same thing over and over. A knight puts a sword in the stone, and this is supposed to make Excalibur more powerful. According to Amy, the barrier is still too weak, somehow. Glad to see that making the barrier was pointless. The scene where Sonic confronted the Eraser Djinn had a lot more emotional punch because the entire game was building up to that.
What good is a world that goes on forever?
That's one of the stupidest lines you've ever said. Why do you want the world to be destroyed eventually? He didn't say this in SE2. It's like making him a nihilist. Oh well, it doesn't matter if the world ends eventually. It's the natural way. That's reserved for villains. Just because it's the way in nature doesn't make it good. Sonic says he doesn't want to understand, which makes him sound like a stubborn, spoiled brat. Imagine if someone said, "I'll make America last forever." Wouldn't it be just as confusing if he was opposed to that? He tries to attack Merlina, clearly in a lethal way. She protects herself with her magic and gets him beaten up in a humanizing moment that I appreciate. And eventually the sword's blade gets broken, and we're supposed to feel sorry for an annoying helper character. He's bigger with a sword the entire game. In an overly depressing and dark moment that comes out of nowhere, the Knights keep telling him to give up and run, and he keeps refusing to. And they're telling him to give up because they care about him. A golden light rises up, and Sonic ends up going super, because it's the end of the story. Did the sword have to be destroyed for this to happen? Wouldn't Amy have known that? Wouldn't she have told them to damage the sword? Or what's it gonna happen regardless? Sonic's not articulate and mature enough to properly explain his side of the argument. And there's really nothing to explain, because there's no reason for him to be opposed to a country lasting forever. Name one con! Sonic doesn't explain that the Eternal Kingdom will be eternally in ruin anyways because of the underworld forces. He spends the whole fight bickering with her over nothing. After Merlina is defeated, all the damage she did is magically undone. I guess because her power is weakened, and so she can't maintain the spell in the kingdom. Although that doesn't explain why the underworld forces somehow vanished. They have free will. Was she controlling them with brainwashing? Maybe the Scabbard was only able to control the underworld forces. If it wasn't controlling them, why would the forces willingly work for her? I mean, she doesn't look like them. Sonic has a moment of insightful articulateness that he should have had earlier on. He says he should live life to the fullest and appreciate flowers while they last. Still doesn't properly refute her point, but why she shouldn't stop the ruin of her kingdom. Since we're so fully capable of appreciating things even when we know they'll last forever, how would she stop appreciating her own kingdom? At least he's being nice instead of a dick for once. Sonic didn't see the Ark trying to crash into the earth and shrug his shoulders and say, every world has its end. Because that was his planet. Shadow says the Knights must disband even though there's no reason they shouldn't keep protecting the world anymore. Why not just elect a new king? Hold an election. Democracy was a thing in ancient Greece, it's not like there's no precedent for it. Caliban reminds them that he's the sacred sword, and so he is the one who decides who is worthy of the crown. Just because he's sacred? How is he sacred unless he was created by a god? Out of nowhere, all of a sudden, the Knights all say in shock that Sonic is the one and true King Arthur. Even though nothing, even in that very cutscene, was logically leading up to them getting that conclusion. He's not responsible enough to be a good king, and prefers to run back to his world. Just because he's worthy of the crown, despite not being responsible, doesn't mean that he's King Arthur. He can't be King Arthur when he didn't originate from that world. And he has his own world to live in. Tails should have been the real King Arthur. It would have made more sense considering the whole hard-working man becomes king thing in medieval times. Apparently it's typical Camelot myth storytelling, having plot twists with no real foreshadowing that create logical inconsistencies. Oh, I guess we got back to that point. And Amy's a jerk in the ending. Some friend. This was a good story until Merlina got demonized. Has a perfect action-packed tone for a Sonic game and uses its environment well, but the plot twists are stupid. Merlina's demonized for the wrong reason, and Sonic comes off as a major hypocrite and a little too dickish, while we're supposed to agree with him the whole time. The characters in Black Knight don't get much opportunity to snap back at Sonic when he's a jerk. I find Sonic's snarky attitude towards other characters a lot better when he's not coming off as a bully, being the only one acting like a jerk. For the most part though, Sonic is written really well, still doing the right thing even though he ignores Caliburn. I hate Caliburn, and the fact that the game expects me to like him. He's only there for Sonic to have someone to argue with. He didn't need someone to argue with. Merlina would have been fine. The thing the story is best for is establishing Sonic's character. It's just too bad it doesn't explain it better.